credit union, insurance companies, so that it can complement that which already exists. And I want to say that in this there where we are faced with the existential threats as a small and developing state, to have the finances and the wherewithal to be able to build resilience is as serious and important to us as the air we breathe. And so, these threats that I'm talking about, you heard about the triple planetary crisis. It is news all over the world. The loss of biodiversity, climate change, and of course, the fact, Mr. Deputy Speaker, that pollution is a threat. I will add one more to it and call it the quaternary change or crisis. And that is sea level rise. And we can go on because we've got ocean acidification that is destroying our coral and our marine life as we know it. Mr. Speaker, you've heard many times that we contribute very little to the climate change crisis. In the tropics, the 2 billion people or so contribute less than any in terms of global greenhouse gas emitted as it relates to the carbon dioxide, the 40 billion tons or so that the world produces. Yet still we feel the adverse effects and the worst effects of climate change. And so you would have heard a noble proposition by this country called the Bridgetown Initiative. By July this year, you would understand the concretization of the Bridgetown Initiative 3.0, because we understand how to have new improvements on something that will basically save our financial way of life. Mr. Speaker, sir, Madam Deputy Speaker, it is all part of ensuring that we have the sustainable development. And when we are talking about the sustainable development goals, the most adaptive project probably in the world is the Bridgetown, as the Roof to Reef program. A program that seeks to look at resilience from every drop of water in our roof, and then it traces it in a way that is sustainable to the reefs, so we can replenish that which is an important part of our blue carbon sink. Very important. Then you look at the roofing network, resilience as it relates to how we harvest water at the household level. It has a domesticated aspect to it, recognizing, of course, that females form an integral part of the culinary build-out of this country. These are important parts of the conversation. That's why I said it is the most holistic adaptive project ever in the world. And I want to say that when we come and conceptualize something as the Bridgetown Initiative, a financial disruption of the normal financial architecture, which would allow big multilateral banks and other institutions to lend us financing at concessionary rates. Now, the importance of this, Madam Deputy Speaker, is to ensure that those who operate in the sphere that I am supposed to be in charge of, the blue environment, of course, the fisher folk, how we can start positioning them to have the finances, to have the alternative energies that we are speaking of, the abatement technologies. Because the only way we can have those abatement technologies if we are going to fully transition by 2030, 35 to a fossil fuel-free country is if we have the abatement technologies. And these abatement technologies are right now being sought after by every single country, recognizing, of course, that there is a threat to the climate as it relates to greenhouse gases. So the abatement technology will be far out of the reach of small island developing states unless we have the financial resources to be able to to garner those technologies. And I'm saying, Madam Deputy Speaker, that you look at the photovoltaics for those in the fishing industry, the boats. You can look, for instance, the transition to biogas and the different technologies that they need. Battery technology and battery storage, even in our boats, is a serious problem. To have eco-friendly fishing lines, because they will redound to that. If you are talking about a complete green fishing industry, you have to look at the eco-friendly even as it relates to the fishing line. New software for the monitoring of the vessels, very important to our fisher folk when they're at sea, so that we can monitor the boats using artificial intelligence. This is where we are going in the fishing industry, but we can only do it if we have the financial mechanisms too. The smart systems, transitional systems at sea, special electronic tagging are very important, so we can have the tagging for our marine life as it relates to migratory patterns of our fish and our marine fauna. Marine visual technology, again, very important, so that we can trace the activities of our fisher folk when they're at sea. And so it is basically the tracing from boat to plate, where everything that happens from the time the boat leaves the seashore to explore their fishing activities, so we can have a catch for our palates. That is the type of technology that we are speaking of. The only way we can have this technology to enhance the industry is, of course, if we are given the financial hub to do it. And I'm saying that it involves the Blue-Green Bank and the initiative to have a partnership with those in the private sector. It involves the public sector, and of course, it involves other multilateral agencies, because we must have a relationship, if we are serious about building out the sector, with those in that particular industry. Mr. Speaker, Madam Deputy Speaker, we know for a fact that the climate change is real. We see it every day. We see the fires that we are faced with in terms of the bushfires. We are having biodiversity loss. I said before that life on this earth started with biodiversity. It would die abruptly without it. And in order to build back our resistance, we have had coastal loss in terms of our erosion on our beaches. We have had erosions that disrupt not only our marine life, but we have had disruption of the life of those who would frequent the beach and those who live in near shore, because this is real in terms of the erosion and the vagaries associated with climate change. It was very, very, very noble of this government to be involved in one of the very first for the Caribbean debt for nature swaps, where we said that the savings on our debt over the next 5-10 years will be put towards building out our blue economic space with a marine spatial plan. And the only way we can have these things is if we have the financial wherewithal to do it, using new and innovative instruments. And I'm saying, Madam Deputy Speaker, that the marine spatial plan that will basically demarcate the ocean so we can have areas for resilience again, which looks at mitigation and adaptation. You've heard already about the breakwaters in the sea to stop the adverse thrust, which will eventually disrupt our ocean and our ocean space. You've heard about the revetment, which aligns itself at the borders of the ocean shores, and so that you won't have the erosion of the beaches. We've heard a lot about groins and how they are able to improve the ability to resist those thrusts of waves. Those are the things that we have heard in terms of the resilience. There are other areas for marine management. And those marine managed areas will obviously protect the biodiversity. It will protect those species that we need to protect so we can ensure that the fishing industry is sustained. We've heard about the marine spatial plan being used for advancement of biodiversity. And we have had the conversation with the biodiversity even beyond our national jurisdiction as part of ensuring that there's preservation of biodiversity, even for those areas that we may not see as part of our EEZ. These are important conversations that we are having now. You know that the ocean is now being looked at as an energy resource. And so those areas, again, must be demarcated with a proper marine spatial plan so that the energy resource of the ocean could be fully utilized. Madam Deputy Chair, these are important dimensions if we are serious about the blue economy. You would have seen the work done on all the fish markets. You heard the former minister of the blue economy, the member of parliament for St. Michael South spoke about the sanitary conditions that he brought to the market and the fact that the fisher folk now have a forum that they could do their business, whether internationally or locally. These are the things we are speaking about. The fact that fisher folk can have access to water in a conservative way, that there's no photovoltaic that is used as an alternative to the fossil fuel. These are the things that we have allowed this country to walk with us in a journey to fully transition away from the fossil fuel. At the same time, we understand full well that the world is faced with depletion of what they call natural resources. So therefore, the abatement technologies that one would expect may be forthcoming may not be as forthcoming as we think because of these vagaries. I am saying, Madam Deputy Chair, that we have to now come with the new innovative finance technologies. We have to be able to disrupt that which was the norm as it relates to the architecture. And I am saying, Madam Deputy Speaker, in my short intervention, that I fully support the Barbados Blue-Green Bank bill, and I look forward to having it redound to the benefits of all Barbadians, especially those who are looking to transition away from the fossil fuel and allow us to have a clean and green environment in the not too distant future. Thank you, Mr. Dunn.
Honourable members for St. Philip South.
Madam Deputy Speaker, I wish to join this debate to give my full support to the Barbados Blue-Green Bank bill and to say that this is part of the development process through which a country is supposed to demonstrate its seriousness in achieving first world status. Madam Deputy Speaker, I've said before in this Parliament that I'm sometimes confused as to where the interests of politicians who feel that their only agenda is to criticize the government and policies that are redound to the benefit of their own people. Now, I've heard severe criticism over and over in the name of opposition politics to development policies in this country that they, the critics, know that they themselves can do no better and will be in no position to reverse what is being done. And that to seek to convey the impression to the public of Barbados first and foremost that what is being done is being treated to by a government, a responsible government, that has been able to adjust to what is taking place globally as far as climate is concerned, and indeed leading the way in climate advocacy, that we can still find a situation where negativity wants to be or is the order of the day in response to what ought to be a complimentary presentation on where we are in terms of our development and what we are hoping to do for the people of Barbados. Madam Deputy Speaker, what is at stake here is not political office. Let me make that clear. What is at stake here is not whether or not any member is going to regain his or her seat to this honorable chamber. What is at stake here, Madam Deputy Chief Speaker, is how do we respond to the challenges that our business people face in this country as it relates to climate. And if we want to be responsible enough to give them the assurance that as they repose their trust and confidence in us, to put us in this honorable chamber to look after the affairs of this country, that we ought to do so collectively when it comes to matters of their developmental interests, Madam Deputy Speaker. And therefore, I want to put on record that whilst we are here wasting time criticizing serious matters that are taking place with things that we cannot change, Madam Deputy Speaker, we can't change climate. We cannot do anything about it. And therefore, the debate is one that is so serious that we ought to learn, research, participate, or do whatever it takes to be able to follow where the world is going as it relates to climate change. And Madam Deputy Speaker, last year in June, 29th of June last year, I attended an FAO conference in Rome. And at that conference, Madam Deputy Speaker, we had a packed room with people from all over the world speaking to what climate is doing to their countries. Agriculture ministers who expressed severe concern about what is taking place in their country, Madam Deputy Speaker. And I am happy to report to you that at that meeting, you know who they wanted to hear most on this issue? They wanted to hear from CARICOM, small island developing states, to find out what it is, first of all, that is affecting us, how we are adapting to what is upon us now, and to look at how we can build resilience within the region. And Madam Deputy Speaker, from within CARICOM, I happen to be the one chosen to make the presentation on behalf of the region. This presentation looked at how we can put resilience in place for the least developed countries in the region, and of course, the one landlocked developing country or one landlocked country that sits close to us, which is Haiti. And Madam Deputy Speaker, I was proud to be part of a conversation that was led to help us to understand where we are in terms of what climate is doing to agriculture. We have lived a life where we talk about open field agriculture, we talk about rain, we talk about production being down, we talk about all the things that are going wrong, Madam Deputy Speaker. And at no point in time did anyone look to see what is the root cause of the problem. We continue to compare agriculture today to agriculture in the past, where we had sugar as king, and what we then produced were rotation crops, intercropping with yams and potatoes, etc., at a time when the country relied purely on rainfall. And on those large plantations, then there were wells where water was extracted from those wells to assist those large farms. Agriculture today now has transitioned to the point you don't have all large plantation owners on farms, Madam Deputy Speaker. We now have a small country, farmers that is farmers that are without water. They don't have wells on their plantations. And therefore, those farmers will not survive unless they have access to water. Many times you will see reports within the press where the farmers are complaining about their access to water. And I believe that in order for us to be able to address these matters, it would take funding. And that funding cannot come from just government alone. This has to be an approach across the region where governments of the CARICOM member states are willing to participate. In order for us to be able to achieve this, it therefore means that member states must commit to the development of climate funding that would allow for farming to survive and to thrive under these difficult conditions. Now, Madam Deputy Speaker, I believe this initiative provides a chance for the traditional banking institutions who will not normally participate in funding agriculture simply because of the major risks they see involved, and then equally with the major risks that pertains to lack of insurance in agriculture. To that end, Madam Deputy Speaker, we have to look at creative means, and we have to look at means outside of regular institutions to be able to support agriculture. And therefore, I believe that the Barbados Blue-Green Bank is that institution that will provide an opportunity now to take away some of the risks from the larger and traditional financial institutions and to give a cheaper or low rate of funding to farmers to be able to participate. Poultry, for example, poultry requires a new design in terms of poultry, chicken farming. And that new design will require for farms not to be constructed with just wire and wood, but that you have to have now tunnels with fans and coolers and chillers so that the chickens in a controlled environment will survive the heat when it comes, and equally it can be adjusted to suit cold times. One farmer in St. John last year, for example, lost 30,000 birds within the space of half hour. And that happened because of a power outage. And the heat that was generated within the space of that half hour destroyed 30,000 birds. You will see that in order for us to be able to supply eggs during the Christmas season, we had to import eggs. And we had to do so because at that time, one of the tunnels that had the layers also shut down. And we lost the production of eggs, and we had to look to an outside source. Madam Deputy Speaker, if this is a global thing, then it means then that all of those countries who are impacted by climate would at some point in time have the same risk that we went through when we were facing the challenges in last year's heat condition. Madam Deputy Speaker, it means that for us to adapt, we must be able to build resilience in order for our farmers to proceed. Our dairy farmers, for example, milk production was down. It was not done because of the Minister of Agriculture, as some people will want to make you believe. It was done because of climate, because of the heat. So the milking cows weren't producing the milk because of the stress from the heat. The same thing goes for sweet potatoes. The same thing goes for yams. When outside is hot, and I've said before, climate change will result in more diseases, more insects. If you have prolonged heat, it's gonna give you more diseases, more insects. If you have prolonged rain, you have flooding, and you're gonna get crop loss. Therefore, sweet potatoes for a long while have been impacted by climate. But you find that last year, and this year as well, they are having challenges with yield because of the excess heat that is taking place. Now, sweet potato is not a crop that likes a lot of water. but it certainly cannot withstand excess heat. And therefore, it was for the farmers then to be able to adjust with clean planting material in order to combat what is taking place and get more climate-tolerant, drought-resistant planting material, which is why we are developing the plant tissue culture lab in Barbados in order to be able to produce that clean planting material for farmers. And therefore, I say, Madam Deputy Speaker, that if we believe that this government can fund all of what is required in order for farmers to have an opportunity to participate, then we are fooling ourselves. And equally, if we want to do this and do not bring the private sector along, we put ourselves in a position where we then put agriculture at severe risk, because you find that more people will exit than those who will enter. And as soon as you start to get people to exit, then the burden falls straight back to the government in order for us to provide food security. And so, Madam Deputy Speaker, I welcome this Barbados Blue-Green Bank Bill simply because it provides an opportunity now for funding outside of the traditional lending systems that we have, but also it gives an opportunity for government to be able to get the private sector to participate in a space where there are better guarantees, lower interest rate, and opportunities to build out agri-food systems that are made for the conditions that we are in today. Madam Deputy Speaker, I want to just make one small correction about Haiti. Indeed, it wasn't Haiti we were referring to when we referred to the landlocked countries. And I want to place on record that correction. But, Madam Deputy Speaker, the problem with small island developing states and landlocked countries will not change because of a small error. The responsibility on all of us, and certainly where the international financial institutions are going, you will be amazed to know that in as much as they are spending billions on climate change, only 18% of global financial cash flows go to agriculture for climate change. And this has to be a very serious problem, one that should frighten all of us. And my position on it when I made my presentation is that out of global financial cash flows for climate, we need to put a minimum of 40% if you're going to achieve a Sustainable Development Goal 2. And I'm saying this because, first of all, we are behind. But secondly, the amount of changes and challenges that are taking place with climate at this point in time, we cannot keep up without providing the financial support that is required. Across the world, the conversation is about food security. How do we protect people from hunger? How do we prevent malnutrition? How do we give people safe, healthy food, and of course, food sovereignty? None of this can be achieved, Madam Deputy Speaker, without funding. And for us to make believe that a blue-green bank being established in Barbados will be used in such a manner as to squander or waste money is to tell me that we have yet in this country people who do not know what is taking place with climate. They have no exposure to where the international conversation is going. They are not participants in what is happening in terms of how we can build resilience. And I have to say that if we don't be careful, I think Barbados, well, not Barbadians, but some Barbadians can easily find themselves being misled with conversations that are grounded only in political or one's political agenda to make people feel that anything that this government is doing is wrong. A government that took us from the brink of a currency devaluation, reversed 23 downgrades, took sewage off the street, brought more garbage collection vehicles, took us through COVID, without losing the amount of lives that I see other places had. Took us through COVID at a time when we didn't have any increase in crime during the COVID period with people breaking in people's houses or robbing people and things like that. Because the government put a buffer in place to protect small businesses and to be able to bring us through and talk us through a period that was extremely difficult, not just for Barbados, for the entire world. And we made it through all of that, and all those critics who are criticizing were at the same risk as everybody else, because their houses could have been broken into, and I deliberately said houses because they may have more than one. And equally, they could have been robbed in one of the 4 cars that they drive. So, Madam Deputy Speaker, I'm not speaking specifically about the opposition leader because he's looking at me as if he's amused about something. I'm speaking specifically about those who do not want to see this government do well. And they're doing so because of their own agenda. And I'm not going to get into anything about George Street because I have a cordial relationship with the opposition leader, unless he has changed that. But at the end of the day, wrong is wrong. And you do not get right when you start wrong. There's no mathematical equation that you can start wrong and come up with the right answer. It's almost like an attempt to square a circle. It will not happen. So if you start wrong, how do you expect to get a right solution? And therefore, I will not discuss anything about George Street because all those who are involved in that is their problem. They have that to solve. But I know once it started wrong, it never gonna be right because there's no solution, Madam Deputy Speaker. You cannot square a circle, and that is the problem. Now, were it me, I would make sure, first of all, that I was welcome. And that would have to be done before I made any appearances anyway on those premises. But that didn't happen. So I ain't getting involved in that, and I want to retain my cordial relationship with the opposition, with the Honourable Opposition Leader. So I'm smirking when I made my error, because of course that amused him. But that would never make a change in what is happening in the world whatsoever. Climate change is climate change. So, Madam Deputy Speaker, I want to say to you that at my ministry we have a whole set of greenhouses that we are putting up for our schools to learn agriculture and to give to our small farmers as well. And we now have to look at how we can use the funds that were made available to the Barbados Agricultural Society to give farmers a start in adding biodigesters to the pig farms and the chicken farms in order to take away the waste from the farms in a pleasant way and to generate energy as well to those farms. And then we are looking to see how, just like you can go and purchase a car, that we have agri-food systems that have temperature controls, chillers, etc., where you can purchase, like going to any one of the car dealers. So you have to, if you can get the major agriculture distributors who are involved in things like fertilizers and those sorts of things, to look at how we can get these systems into Barbados and people can get them on terms. The Blue-Green Bank will be the perfect place where we can then rely on to get the funding through either the traditional banking system or through some special purpose vehicle to be able to help farmers to transition to what is required. And so, Madam Deputy Speaker, I believe that this gives us the perfect opportunity to help the private sector through the challenges they're facing and to be able to then build out agriculture, increase our production again, and help us to build resilience. I'm obliged to you.
Item we spend some close to. Honourable for Christchurch East Central.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. As I rise to wrap up this debate, sir, I really want to thank honourable members for what has been what I can only describe as an extremely robust debate, in spite of that what was offered by the member for Christchurch South. No, sir. I am reminded very clearly, sir, when I visited, two things when I visited Morocco last year, sir, for the annual IMF World Bank annual meetings. And you would recall, sir, that sometime in September, the date escaped me, but a few weeks before the annual meetings, there was an earthquake, you would recall, sir, in Morocco. And the extent that the damage that was done caused the world, if you like, to question, could Morocco still host the world in the context of climate change? And the Moroccan government, sir, in discussions with the IMF and the World Bank, determined, given that the relief operations that were being undertaken, sir, that they will not just focus on the humanitarian relief, but use the opportunity to remind the world that the time that is required for all of us, sir, to be able to build resilience really needs to be amplified and accelerated, sir. And therefore, the IMF and the World Bank, using that colloquium, if you like, sir, marshaled, I suppose, a new level of urgency with respect to all institutions helping to build resilience in a way that would allow for countries, and certainly the communities and the citizens within those countries, sir, to achieve some measure of mitigation/adaptation in order to minimize, sir, the extent to which either lives were lost, livelihoods, sir, destroyed or impacted negatively, and certainly to ensure that you can have safety and security in spite of these significant events taking place. And that, sir, was an important signal to the world, because Barbados certainly has, as well as many of us in the Caribbean, we've had to pull ourselves together after significant events, and therefore it is really testimony to the resilience of human beings to recognize that in fellowship you can achieve great things, sir, once you work together. The second observation that I want to make, sir, given that we did raise it here, I was in a forum, sir, in the same IMF World Bank meetings last October in Marrakesh with other finance ministers, and I was struck by a remark by the Minister of Finance for Djibouti, sir, who, in this forum that we were in, remarked at the fact that rain had not fallen in Djibouti, sir, for 4 years. 4 years, sir. And that blew my mind, because the Deputy Prime Minister last year, as you recall, sir, had to introduce water restrictions in Barbados for 4 months, May, June, July, and August of last year, because of the reduction in rainfall that we had experienced in the dry season, less than half of the average 30-year rainfall. And I asked myself, sir, and obviously the water, I mean, to even contemplate rain not falling for a month, 2 months, 3 months, in any significant way is inconceivable, far less, sir, 4 years. And therefore, the concerns that the Minister of Finance for Djibouti had, sir, in relation to how the world was going to build resilience quickly was about the fact that it wasn't just the fact that the rain didn't fall for 4 years. It is that water insecurity, sir, leads to other elements of stability for which a country really cannot effectively honor any developmental goals that it may wish to achieve. And therefore, it was absolutely important, not just from a financing perspective, but equally, sir, from a access to technologies perspective, that they have had to make some significant judgments in relation to not just importing water, but certainly water conservation and the like, sir, on a scale that I hope, sir, that Barbados and this region would never, ever, ever, ever fully experience. But as we saw last year, and certainly the last year for sure, and the Prime Minister did make reference to it in her remarks. I remember one afternoon, sometime in October, standing outside the balcony at government headquarters, sir. And the rain was falling, sir, horizontally, wildly, violently, sir. And within less than 5 to 10 minutes, there was a torrent, literally a river, sir, running down Beckles Road. And it was as quickly as the rain was falling, sir, the torrent developed, it ran into the sea, sir, and it just spoke to the fact that our designs with respect to infrastructure, because obviously with such large volumes of water, the wells became inundated very quickly, sir. Water started to settle in areas that wouldn't normally settle, sir. The pumping capacity, certainly in the Bayland, could not fully accommodate the volume of water that we were seeing in those spaces, sir. And therefore, as much as we can try to get ahead of these things, the building of resilience, sir, is key to ensuring that people can live as comfortable a life, sir, whether in the Bayland or in St. Lucie or wherever else in the country, sir, that we want to make sure that people can have a comfortable experience. I will respond to one matter, sir, that was raised by the Honourable Leader of the Opposition. And it is this, and I hope that Barbadians will appreciate the nuance of what I'm going to say. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition indicated that the government was spending money in what I could only describe as a way that is biased or partisan or some interpretation of that was meant to be conveyed as if it's in the negative. Now, lest he forget, the people of this country, sir, or the people of this country on 2 occasions voted comprehensively to elect the Barbados Labour Party to administer the affairs of this country. And I know that in his contemplation, the way that his side would normally look at things, the reality is that in the past, we all know, sir, that governments made decisions squarely in relation to the seats for which their members were elected. But since 2018, in case he's forgotten, this government has had all of the seats in the country. And therefore, whether it's St. Lucie, St. Philip, St. John, St. Peter, any part of the country, sir, spending has taken place across the length and breadth of this country. And therefore, to suggest that if you spend money in St. Lucie, or you spend money in St. Michael, sir, or you spend money in St. Philip, or any other part of this country, is partisan or biased or anything, sir, I take umbrage to that. Because this is the first time in the history of this country, and I know it's not something that is often said, but this is the first time that you've had a government, sir, spending money to address the issues that are so cross-cutting, so integrated in nature, that for someone to describe spending as being biased or partisan, sir, I think is unfortunate. It is very unfortunate, sir, because the people of this country certainly expect that a lot from this government, and we've tried to respond as best we can given the given what we've had to recover from. And the honourable member fully knows, he knows in his heart, sir. He knows in his heart, and he cannot contain himself. He knows deep down to the sole of his feet. He knows, sir. He knows the state that his party left this country in. He knows that. And therefore, each dollar that was spent to repair the trust between government, this is not about BLP now, you know, sir. It's about government and the people. That this government has worked hard to ensure that we deliver on the things that matter to people. And therefore, that characterization that the spending is partisan, I know that he may feel that somehow or the other, and I must admit, sir, that the idea of questioning money that's being spent in your constituency as being something negative, I find extraordinary, but he's found himself in a strange place these days, and I understand that he has to make certain soundings. But I think that all in all, the public will get a different sense that the government has been responding to the challenges that we've been confronted with, and that our execution in relation to spending is not partisan. It is the government spending money to ensure that the range of issues that need to be addressed across this country is done in as even-handed a way as possible, given the fiscal circumstances, sir, that we find ourselves in. But, sir, I am not going to detain the House much longer. There are just a couple of amendments to be made in committee, sir, and therefore I want, again, sir, to indicate to the public that the establishment of the Barbados Blue-Green Bank is going to be a critical intervention helping this country, this region, sir, to be able to achieve climate resilience, because we will be able to work, I think, much more nimbly and collaboratively with other financial institutions. And therefore, members have articulated a number of areas within which we would love to see Barbadians individually or businesses or some of our public sector institutions create the necessary proposals to be able to help the bank to be able to make decisions in order to get the projects implemented, so that year by year by year by year, sir, we're able to see that whilst there may be challenges coming our way, that we've been able to achieve the results that we know that we can achieve, because we've taken concrete steps, sir, with respect to being able to find those solutions, finance those solutions, and have those solutions implemented. And so, sir, with those few words, I will beg to move, sir, that this bill be read a second time.
Question is that the bill be read a second time. All those honourable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it.
Mr. Speaker, do not beg to move that you leave the chair and the House resolve itself in committee for further consideration of this bill.
The question is that the Speaker do not leave the chair and the House resolve itself into committee for further consideration of this bill. All those honourable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it.
Yeah. Delete and delete, yeah.
permission.
This Honourable House is now in committee.
Mr. Chairman, requesting permission to call in parts.
Granted.
Part 1, clauses 1 through 4.
Chair, beg to move that Part 1, clauses 1 to 4 stand part.
The question is that Part 1, clauses 1 to 4 stand part. All honourable members in favour, say aye. Honourable members against, we say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Part 2, clauses 5 to 19.
Chair, beg to move that Part 2, clauses 5 to 19 stand part.
The question is that Part 2, clauses 5 to 19 stand part. All honourable members in favour, say aye. Honourable members against, we say no. Thinks the ayes have it.
Part 3, clauses 20 to 30.
Chair, in this section, I beg to move an amendment to clause 28.1, where it would delete the original clause 28.1 and replace it with the following. Subject to this section, the initial authorized share capital of the bank shall be $100 million. Dividends in such shares and issued on such terms as the directors shall determine at the first meeting of the board. And for clause 29.4, we will delete the original submission and replace it with the following. Shares initially subscribed for by a shareholder shall be issued on such terms as the board determines. And clause 33, we wish to delete that and replace it with the following. The first installment shall be paid by each shareholder within 90 days after the date on which a shareholder subscribes for shares. And with those amendments, Chair, I beg to move that Part 3, clauses 20 to 30, stand part as amended.
The question is that Part 3, clauses 20 to 30, as amended, stand part. All honourable members in favour, say aye. Honourable members against, we say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Part 4, clauses 31 to 35.
Chair, I beg to move that Part 4, clauses 31 to 35 stand part.
The question is that Part 4, clauses 31 to 35 stand part. All honourable members in favour, say aye. Honourable members against, we say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Part 5, clauses 36 to 38.
Chair, I beg to move that Part 5, clauses 36 to 38 stand part.
The question is that Part 5, clauses 36 to 38 stand part. All honourable members in favour, say aye. Honourable members against, say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Part 5, clauses 36 to 38.
Now we just do? Schedule. Chair, I beg to move that the schedule be the schedule to the bill.
The question is that the schedule be the schedule of the bill. All honourable members in favour, say aye. Aye. Honourable members against, say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Report.
Chair, I beg to move that you do no report to His Honour the Speaker the passing of one bill in committee with amendments.
The question is that I do no report to His Honour the Speaker the passing of one bill in committee with amendments. All honourable members in favour, say aye. Honourable members against, say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Chairman of committees has reported the passing of one bill in committee with amendments. Honourable for Christchurch East Central.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that this bill be read a third time.
Question that this bill read a third time. All those honourable members in favour, please say aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that this bill be now passed and cited as the Barbados Blue-Green Bank Act 2024.
The question is that this bill be passed and so cited. All those honourable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Me think the ayes have it. This bill is passed and so cited.
Order number 9, sir. In the name of the Honourable Minister in the Ministry of Finance and Economic Affairs, to move the passing of a resolution to approve in accordance with Section 2 of the Special Loans Act, Cap 105, the borrowing of up to US $12,400,000 from the CARICOM Development Fund to co-finance and augment the 3 Rs, reduce, reuse, and recycle for the climate resilient wastewater systems project on the terms and conditions contained in the loan agreement, the main provisions of which are set out in the schedule.
Honourable Member Christchurch East Central.
Thank you so very much, Mr. Speaker. Having just spent the afternoon passing the establishment of the Blue-Green Bank, which was intended, as I said earlier, sir, to be able to signal the blended finance approach that we will undertake. This specific loan agreement here, sir, as I mentioned then, is to facilitate the co-financing in relation to, on the one hand, sir, the $40 million that we receive in grant funding from the Green Climate Fund for the upgrade of the Bridgetown sewage plant to a tertiary facility, sir. And therefore, this co-financing agreement, which is being provided by the CARICOM Development Fund, and for those persons who may not be aware, this is not the CDB, sir. There is a specific entity which has been established by CARICOM, the CDF, which is intended to ensure that it minimizes the disparity, sir, between more developed countries in the region and less developed countries in the region. And therefore, we reached out to the CDF to be able to provide this co-financing arrangement with the CARICOM, with the GCF, in order to do this. I reminded the chamber earlier that when we came to office, one of the processing units of the Bridgetown plant was not operational. And you recall, sir, the growth of the pumpkins and everything else that was in there, which was not what it was designed for. And therefore, as part of how whilst there was a lot of focus on the South Coast, sir, this particular element is related to focus on Bridgetown in order to ensure that we can help better manage our water resources. Now, sir, the sum being asked here to be borrowed is $12.4 million. The term of the loan is 12 years, sir. There's a 2-year grace period on principal, and which means obviously you're repaying over a 10-year period, sir. And the interest rate is fixed, sir, at 3% per annum, and the frequency of payment, sir, is quarterly. Now, as the resolution says, sir, this is to provide the co-financing in that arrangement, and therefore, much like what we have been talking about this afternoon, this is what the government has been doing in practice in order to ensure that we improve the livelihoods of Barbadians, and to recognize that when we make these investments in our infrastructure, sir, that from time to time we have to make sure that where there are upgrades and repairs to be done, that the financing of that is done in the most cost-efficient manner. Now, just very quickly, just for the benefit of the public, sir, and to indicate, let me 1 second, sir, because it is important for the public to understand and appreciate what exactly is happening here. So whilst we are upgrading the plant, sir, to a tertiary level facility, part of the work here, sir, specifically, is to construct the installation of 9 kilometers, sir, of pipeline to transport the treated wastewater to the lands at Waterford and the Lears Plantation, sir, which, as you know, the Honourable member for St. Philip South has been unlocking areas with respect to enhancing agricultural production within that space to ensure that there's a dedicated source of water for that, as well as 0.65 kilometers of pipe to replace the sewage force main from the River Road lift station to the Bridgetown sewage plant, as well, sir, as the installation of a 1 megawatt solar PV system, including site preparation, sir, at the Bell Plantation. So these specific set of funds are dedicated with respect to being able to finance those specific things. One of the other components that's being done as part of the overall project, because the GCF grant money, sir, is dealing with the upgrade of the plant itself. This money is to move the water from the plant, sir, to where we will be able to reuse it. As I mentioned earlier, sir, CAF is working on the development of a portable water and sanitation master plan financed by them, sir. And therefore, sir, yet another example of how the government has been working collaboratively, as I say, sir, to scale up and to leverage. Now, just as I mentioned earlier, sir, all told is just about $100 million that is being invested in the upgrade of the Bridgetown plant. If we had to go and borrow $100 million, sir, on the open market, because this is a commercial exercise, then you'll be looking at costings in well excess of 5 to 6% for sure. And therefore, this approach with the grant, and grant means, sir, that you don't have to pay back the money, so the interest rate is 0, and you don't have to pay, of $40 million US dollars. This is $12 million US dollars, what we are paying 3% for, and therefore this is a small component of the overall financing that we have to repay. And so therefore, sir, I believe that this is a good deal, certainly for the country, and therefore, when we were discussing all afternoon, the Blue-Green Bank is intended to ensure that as far as possible, these types of blended arrangements can be put in place in order to ensure that the country's development trajectory can be sustained in a way, recognizing that obviously there's climate vulnerability in relation to it. So our ability to reuse our water, and this is something that we have to ensure that Barbadians fully appreciate and understand. This is not something to make sport about, sir, because if we ever get to a stage, sir, where the rain has not fallen for 4 years, then you know, sir, there'll be pandemonium about here. And therefore, the government is taking steps to ensure that our ability to better manage all of our water resources, sir, comes with not allowing water just to flow into the sea as it is doing right now, but we're able then to make sure that from a sustainability perspective, that we are making the right kind of investment in a cost-efficient manner in order to help us to be able to do that. So, sir, this is a very important piece of how the government has been using sustainable financing arrangements to be able to help Barbados continue on its development trajectory. And therefore, this resolution before this honourable chamber, sir, is just for us to be able to enter into the loan agreement with the CARICOM Development Fund to be able to execute this very important work, which I know, sir, will help a number of farmers within the urban corridor to be able to have better access to water, which will enhance our agricultural production across a number of areas, sir, enhancing our food security, and therefore being able to help to contain, sir, some of the issues with respect to whether imports or the cost of living to some degree, sir, in relation to being able to get this done. And so, sir, with those very, very, very few words, I beg to move, sir, that this resolution do now pass.
I remember, right, sir, so.
I'm obliged to, Your Honor. This has been an extremely interesting day in the life of this Parliament. Quite a remarkable day, really. And this is not any review intended for you, sir. But I think I'm entitled to say that we came to the business of this Parliament today and engaged in a matter of an amendment to the Criminal Law Procedure Act. And at the end of what I thought was a reasonably good and involved debate. The Honorable Attorney General said, well, he admits that what he did here today may not come into operation